So it's on the basketball front. Houston put together another gritty as hell road win at Texas Tech on Monday night. A shorthanded Texas Tech team, yes, but an impressive win in a raucous, rowdy environment, about as good as you're going to get in college basketball right now. And they clinched a share of the Big 12 regular season title again. That's 2 in 2 years for Houston in the Big 12. Meanwhile, the guys that were supposed to be the big dogs in the league, man, Kansas and Baylor, those are your two national championship caliber programs. They're scuffling big time. Most of this will focus on Kansas, but I include Baylor in this too, because that's a team that won a national title not very long ago, a post-COVID national championship, and is now struggling to make the tournament. Kansas is going to make the tournament, but they're struggling to keep that seed above water right now. So I asked the question. I mean, Houston's clearly on a Big 12 takeover right now. Have they overtaken Kansas? Has Houston overtaken Kansas? Are we officially declaring them now top dog in the Big 12? However it is that you define that, I will get to more on that in just a moment as to how I would specifically define that and what I think about that. But man, I mean, Houston's just so tough. Like I tweeted, feels like they could win a road game in hell. They've got the longest road winning streak in the country, and you can see why. They have so many guys that are just gritty and tough and are always there to make a play when they need it. And I can hear Tech fans. I hear you. I can hear everybody screaming at their television or phone or computer screen right now. Like, hey man, Darian Williams and Chance McMillan didn't play, down two of our best players. It was a 6-man rotation. I understand all of that. It's very true. It's very true. It definitely changed the game. But I would say if you're going to pound that too hard right now, you're diminishing an accomplishment for yourself, because really the point that I'm making here with all this and being impressed by Houston is that was an insane atmosphere and an insane environment. United Supermarkets Arena is a hell of a place to try. Speaking of hell, a hell of a place to try and go win a game in right now, especially when it's a big time matchup that has Big 12 championship implications, and you've got celebrities sitting courtside. Like, that's gonna be an insanely raucous environment, and it was. I would sum it up like this. Texas Tech fan friend of mine hit my DM on Twitter on Monday and said, Mahomes courtside, Yormark courtside, Cody Campbell courtside, stadium packed, 2 top 10 teams, Big 12 hoops, no other conference has this aura. And you basically could just narrow that down to, like, Texas Tech has this aura. That's a tough place to go in and win. And they did. They did, and made it look easy's not the right word, but they can just kind of like casually also not the right word, business-like. There we go. It's just like another day at the office for Houston when they go win road games like that. It's another day at the office, and somebody will step up and pull a little bit more of the weight. It was Uzan on Monday. It was LJ Cryer on Saturday against Iowa State, had 28. Obviously, we've seen Juwan Roberts do it a lot, can be Emmanuel Sharp. They just have so many guys that can step up and do that. Remember, I told you when I was going through and making my midseason All Big 12 team for the Open for Business newsletter, it's like, I got to include somebody from Houston, but it's tough because they're all just hovering right around the same level in terms of impact and stats. So it's really difficult to pick one out of that group, but it makes them a hell of a team. So that's going on for Houston. They're winning a game like that, ho-hum, against Texas Tech and achieving at least a share of a second straight Big 12 title since entering the league, and they are in absolute all likelihood going to win it going away solo this year. And then on the other side, you got Baylor, national championship program. Scott drew all this. I mean, in danger of missing the tournament. They lost their third straight game last night by 2 at Cincinnati. Boy, 3 straight years of second round losses. I mean, they're getting to the tournament. They're not getting bounced in the first round, but 3 straight years of second round losses. That's been just like a stone wall put up, and now might not make the tournament. We'll see. But probably will, but they got to stop the bleeding if they're going to. And Kansas, who has been the absolute top dog, has not been back to the second weekend since winning the national championship 3 years ago. Bill Self, meanwhile, is fending off retirement rumors because it's not just the story from Barry Trammell and the Oklahoman that came out, but then the Field of 68 podcast with John Fanta was on the Field of 68 podcast talking to Jeff Goodman and company, Rob Doster and crew, and he had said, hey, I mean, he was speculating about it, like, I think this could be it. I think this could be it for Bill Self. That meant that Jeff Goodman then reached out and asked him about it, and Self said that's not true at all, that he's considering retirement. But he's having to bat down these like retirement or like, are you leaving things? And it's because things are going by his standards so poorly. And he does have the health issues there to think about too. And his team actually out on the floor obviously just does not look good. He's mired in the worst season that he's had at Kansas. And they're still, earlier this week, struggling to put away Colorado, winning by 7 on the road, like nothing to write home about. And Kansas, by the way, they're 10-7 in the league. They got to finish with Tech, Houston, and Arizona. So, 2 of the 3 games are at home, but have fun with that. That's not easy. So based on the current states here, based on a couple-year trend of Houston coming into the league and doing this, like, are we ready to say, is Kelvin Sampson the alpha dog now? Has he overtaken Bill Self at the top of the hill in the new league? Is Houston the new Kansas? I mean, if we're looking at the tail of the tape, they finished 5 games in front of Kansas last year. They're 6 games ahead of them right now in the conference. They've obviously won it now 2 years in a row when Kansas hasn't. They beat KU in Allen Fieldhouse earlier this year. They beat them by 30 in Houston last year. 2 of 3 or 2-1 is their record against the Jayhawks, including a 30-point drubbing and a win at Allen, since both teams have been in the league. And Houston's been to 5 straight second weekends, whereas Self, it's been feast or famine lately. 5 straight second weekends for Houston. Could have had a 6th if the tourney was played. Obviously, that's same for everybody with the COVID year. But I don't know, man. I mean, they don't have a national title or the Final Four, under Kelvin Sampson. They don't have like the 20 years of longevity that Bill Self had built up there and winning 14 straight Big 12 championships at one point. But even with the 2 here in what's likely to be another multi-game win, like they will win the league by multiple games. It was 2 last year, could be 2 or 3 this year. I don't know. I think you got to give it to them. For now, you got to give it to them. That doesn't mean that it's quite the assumed top dog status that Kansas had every year rolling there for a while. You're not hitting that level of it. But for now, you got to look up and say, like, Houston's the team to beat. That's who you got to knock off. Like, Houston, that's where you don't want to go play. They had a 33-game home win streak before Texas Tech snapped that this year. That's become the place where, like, nobody can win. I mean, now it's not easy, but teams are winning in Allen Fieldhouse. It's not impossible either at this point. Feels almost impossible to do it at Houston. They have the nation's longest road winning streak. Like, they don't lose road games, which is, I mean, that's where you're supposed to be able to get them. Like, that's vintage Kansas stuff. That's vintage Kansas stuff. What Houston is doing right now in this small snapshot. And yes, a lot of the damage that they did before that was the AAC, but I mean, I think that part for Kelvin Sampson has been completely vindicated by what they've done in the Big 12, obviously. So I think you can even extend that out and say, yeah, it's only been 2 years here in the Big 12, but look at what they did the 4 or 5 years before that in the AAC. I think you can kind of tack that on and include it, because it was not a problem at all for them to transition into the Big 12. So I would give it to them right now. I would. Could still be taken back. I'm also not somebody who's giving up on Bill Self, honestly, not even totally this team this year. If we're at least talking about them maybe making a second weekend, I think they could still figure that out, turn it around. Bill Self is trying to, he called it a new season now for them at this point. He's trying to pull out all the stops for that. And there are a few that have been better throughout the course of college basketball history at figuring it out.